So this last bit in the book is not a full-fledged chapter per se, and is it's more of like a prayer or a poem. Overall, though, I guess before we like talk about the poem, do you guys have any thoughts about the other parts of the book that have been read and discussed previously that really like still stick out or
I don't have the book, so I mainly learn about it when we're doing this.
okay, no worries. Additionally, the book is free online.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Um,
if you look at the pinned messages in the book club channel, you'll see where I talk about the current book Beyond Anger. And then if you scroll down a bit, the Amazon link to the listing is there. I don't know if there will be some difficulties since you and I are on different sections of the world, but um,
well, I'm sure I can get it somehow.
but it is free, technically speaking. So
Yeah, I remember enjoying the introductory chapter quite a bit. It's been a couple weeks since it, so I don't remember all the specifics, but I may
right,
give that portion a reread because it definitely had a lot of good points in there. I'm just trying to recall that I'm having
right.
difficulty, but I will go over it again.
I would argue that a significant chunk of this book has a lot of rereadability, as far as new knowledge and thoughts to be gained from going over sections again.
For
Sounds like a
sure, for
good
sure.
book.
You gotta first give it a glance through in most books like this, and then you gotta read or at least skim a second time to fully digest, just
Yeah,
in my opinion.
that's been my experiences with the chapters. I'll read them ahead of time and then I find new insights at the discussions, and that's what I like about it. The last chapter reads sort of like this. All the good works gathered in 1,000 ages, such as deeds of generosity and offerings to the blissful ones, a single flash of anger shatters them. And so it's kind of just this. Um, I want to call it a lovely imagery. I like the way poetry makes my brain work. So I'm very fond of this final chapter as a way to end the book. No evil is there similar to anger, no austerity to be compared with patience. Steep yourself therefore in patience in various ways insistently. We don't have to read it word for word or anything. I did genuinely enjoy going through this poem the first time.
I'm enjoying going through it with you now.
um, those tormented by pain of anger never know tranquility of mind. Strangers they will be to every pleasure. They will neither sleep nor feel secure. Even those dependent on their lord, for gracious gifts of honors and of wealth, will rise against and slay a master who is filled with wrath and hate. I like the imagery there. I like what I'm imagining in my mind.
Likewise.
His family and friends he grieves, and is not served by those his gifts attract. No one is there, all in all, who, being angry, lives at ease. Hmm.
Makes me think of, and as I said in the chat, I had just seen the ping for this like an hour ago, like an hour ago, when I was busy, so I haven't read this.
No worries.
But that makes me think of people who are ambitious and get to a high,
Hmm.
I don't know, point, whether that be old time kings or even lower levels than that, anything. It's they think it's going to be, in my mind, leadership and things like that. I people think of it as a metaphor of like you get to that high level, you're like a passenger in a plane, but really you're
Mm-hmm.
more like a pilot with all the confusing controls in front of you, all the pressure on you, and it's much more stressful. That ambition does not lead to contentment, especially if you claw your way up there through anger and through
Hmm.
desire.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure if that's the exact point it's trying to get across, but it made me think about that.
Mm-hmm. I think that can be the lovely part of something poetic in this way, that it will read very different to everyone who reads it, I think. Especially given the cadence with which I'm reading, I think that'll evoke a different mind than if I were to read it with a different tone. You know what I mean?
For sure, I do.
Yeah. All these ills are brought by wrath, our sorrow-bearing enemy. But those who seize and crush their anger down will find their joy in this and future lives. Hmm. That seems.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of the seizing and the crushing of emotions, that perspective. But I mean, what do I know? I'm still learning. But there's ways to let it go. I always like
Mhm.
the idea of feeling and letting go more than seizing and crushing because I've just had difficulty with that with different emotions before.
Mhm.
No matter how much you intellectually understand them, to be able to grasp them and crush them, it's like trying to grasp sand. It just squeezes out and comes out more.
I do find the word choice very interesting given that I don't feel like the book itself has that tone in regards to anger as an emotion. I feel that previous chapters really would indicate that anger isn't something to crush so much as to harness or understand. Um, and into some
Yeah.
ways, like, redirect when necessary.
hmm But each section is not in this book. Each section isn't written by the same person, is it? Am I getting that right?
Um,
Is it a collection
this
or
last section definitely, I don't think, is written by the author.
yeah. Then of course you'll get different
Jack
perspectives.
Cornfield. Oh, you're right. Yep, each section is written by a different author. That's correct.
Then yeah, you'll be able to pick and choose what meshes best and how you can use it best. Maybe crushing down anger really does work for a certain personality type or a certain
Mm-hmm.
cultural circumstance. Um, who knows? Could even work for me. I'm learning different perspectives and ways.
Perhaps a couple of ways you could look at it would be so it is a peculiar choice of words from my own experience as well. But if I notice that if I have some kind of strong feeling, especially a feeling that I might call negative, and with my mind I jump onto it. So I'm not trying to keep it there, I'm not trying to push it away, but I really put my mind on it. It becomes my focus and I'm inspecting it. It just dissolves. And so you could take that as a seizing and crushing metaphor, but another way to look at it might be if you've got someone who's really just starting out on their path,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps speaking about it like that is a way that will resonate with them. And sure, later on they might not want to try and crush their anger, they might just be with it, but it might be the most appropriate means for somebody who sees the world in that way to reduce the ill effects of their anger.
I think that's an incredibly important thing to bring up, though, is realizing that when you're helping individuals at a different point in their path than you, that you have to meet them at the words they understand. You can't always rely on the way you see things now. You have to understand how they're seeing it and what's going to be helpful to the next step. Not with this expectation that they're somehow going to make an incredible leap to your level or a major future level.
Mm-hmm. In a book I'm listening to at the moment, I think it's called The Heart of the Buddha's Teachings by the Zen monk I can never remember how to pronounce the name of.
Uh, is that the one?
But pardon?
Thich Nhat Hanh. Am I pronouncing that right?
That's
Is
the
that the guy?
one.
Yep.
That sounds like so. I'm part of his Sangha as well, and and that's how they pronounce it. So I think you're right. um, and in this book, there are teachings on interbeing, which if I had heard when I just started learning about Buddhism and the route that I started from was the Four
Mhm.
Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, it would have been like, yeah, that sounds like a nice concept. And it wouldn't have really meant anything to me. Going through it
Right.
now, and so this adds to what you say about rereading a book, going through it now, it has a totally different meaning to what it would have had then to me.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
perhaps we will reread this poem another day and it will have a totally different meaning to us again.
Yeah. All works of writing, whether they be poetry or narratives or even just basic essays, nonfiction, it's a conversation between, if you're sitting down and reading it, you're connecting it to other dots, other ideas you heard before, your own experiences, and it can never be read the same way twice, either by yourself, because you're always a different person, or by you and actually somebody else.
Yeah.
For sure.
To build on that, we have no idea what is meant by these words. We only know what our mind tells us is meant by them.
Mm-hmm. Our interpretation of their objective meaning.
Yeah, and
I'd love to keep going through it if we can.
Yep.
yep.
Getting what I do not want, and all that hinders my desire. In discontent my anger finds its fuel. From this it grows and beats me down. Um, Therefore I will utterly destroy the sustenance of this enemy, my foe who has no other purpose but to hurt and injure me. I think getting what I can from this poem, I feel the foe itself must be anger.
Yeah. It certainly goes for a combative approach to the emotion,
Mm-hmm.
which, yeah, it's a perspective for sure. Fighting back against it, it might work. I don't know. From my limited experience, it's more difficult to fight emotions in that way. But
Yeah.
hey, making an enemy of it certainly motivates you, and if you realize the harm it's causing, that motivation could certainly work in diminishing it.
I would agree and argue that a healthier way, or I hope the intent of the healthier mindset is that you begin to just see how these emotions are contrary to your true nature
Mm-hmm.
and the truth of like who you are at your core. And so I don't know. I think as um, you know, Techie said earlier, it's not so much that is the ultimate like step you're supposed to get to, so much as the beginning ways of meeting a person where you can. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you start out combative with the ultimate goal of just seeing how it's part of the sickness of sukha, not sukha, samsara. Sorry, sukha. I'm
Yeah.
bad at words.
Especially when it's not in your native language, it only makes sense.
um, So come what may, I'll not upset my cheerful happiness of mind. Dejection never brings me what I want. My virtue will be warped and marred by it. If there's a remedy when trouble strikes, what reason is there for dejection? And if there is no help for it, what use is there in being glum? So that's just immediately a rewording of what I hear all of the time. So either
Absolutely.
you can fix it, so why be stressed out? Or you can't, so why worry about it?
Oh,
Easier said than done, but true.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and I always have I have some I really like the message that that thing's getting across. I always have some difficulty in my mind where my mind just wants to play devil's advocate, and I think you could solve it, but then there's always the uncertainty of, are you going about it the right way?
Mm.
Is this the actual way to solve it?
Mhm.
Do I know if I can solve it or not? There's the uncertainty of that aspect where it's easy in the way it's read to think, oh, black and white, I know I can solve this or I know I can't. Sometimes you don't know. And sometimes you know that you could, but you're not sure how.
Mhm.
And sometimes you're trying, but you're like, is this even working or is it making it worse? So there's the fear of not knowing if you actually could. So knowing whether you can or can't is a big step in being able to reach that
Mhm.
tranquility, that comfort level.
and that's a skill that has to be built. I'm not sure how, but that always comes to me.
I
Fair
guess
enough.
that's what it is to take refuge in the three jewels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To say, I don't know. Because if I did know, I'd just go and do it.
Right.
I don't know how to solve all these problems of suffering. I may have some intellectual model of it, but I don't know. I haven't seen it. But I believe, I have faith that at least one person has. And this wasn't a super person. This was a very wise person, but a person nonetheless. And this person was willing to spend the time to tell us
Mm-hmm.
through countless peoples and intermediaries. And so, I don't know, but that faith can be what pulls you out of despair a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
That is something achievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if not, we're in this together.
The rest of us are floundering together.
Yeah, I like that, floundering. I've just got this mental image of people laying in water, flapping around, splashing.
um, Pain, humiliation, insults, or rebukes. We do not want them. Either for ourselves or those we love. For those we do not like, it's the reverse. The cause of happiness is rare, and many are the seeds of suffering. But if I have no pain, I'll never long for freedom. Therefore, O mind, be steadfast. Um, First stanza is pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
The second one absolutely brings to mind the reality of like how the difficulties I think, I think everybody has in whatever faith they hold, whomever they seek divine guidance from. Is this, well, why is there suffering? Why is there pain? Why haven't we fixed it yet? Or why was it a thing in the first place? And it's difficult to understand that you're not free if it's not painful, I guess, is what I.
I guess, why would it matter if it wasn't painful?
Right. Um, you wouldn't. Oh, gosh. You have nothing to compare it to. You can't
Mm.
appreciate the water if you've never been thirsty.
Have you heard of the hedonic treadmill?
Mm-hmm.
Reminds me a bit like that, where, in fact, let me use something from the first introduction I ever had to Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
And it was by someone who, to use his exact words, is obsessed with sugar powdered donuts. And he was talking from the point of view of sort of what we call like modern psychology, saying that we think, donut's gonna be great. Really want this donut. I'm gonna have a donut. It's gonna be amazing. All I want in life is donut. I will be happy and satisfied when I have this donut. And you eat the donut. You go, this is nice. It may not be as nice as you thought, but it was nice. And then you go, no, I haven't got a donut. And so we only know what it is to not have a donut because there are donuts to have. And so we only know what it is to be free because we know what it is not to be free.
Right.
One donut now.
I already had one this morning.
Oh.
Oh, I was
I
going to
didn't
use
buy
far
it. My
more
parents
colourful
just
words.
bought it. I'm like, yeah, awesome.
What sort of donut? Let us indulge in your sense
Let us live vicariously through you. Tell us about the donut.
Boring, Krispy Kreme glaze that I ate in all of 8 seconds.
Those aren't boring, especially if you get them fresh.
They are actually kind of like my favorites. They're just so simple.
I wouldn't call them boring though.
Is
But
that taken as a personal attack for a donut lover? Don't you
better be
dare
careful.
call my donuts
Watch my
boring.
words.
dare
I love
you?
my donuts.
So as much as I, when I get the opportunity, so I have some health issues with like sugar, so I can't just eat sugary food all the time.
Mhm.
And so when I do, I have in my mind that it has to be at least a 7 on my scale to eat it. Like my enjoyment needs to be at least 7 out of 10 if that I know I'm going to get. So for me, it's like really easy to resist random Walmart donuts, right, from their half half-assed bakery.
Yeah.
What I mean? Like you look at those donuts, what are you get from that? Like a 3? Yeah, you ate some bread. And then a Krispy Kreme donut is somewhere between a 6 and 7 depending on if it's fresh or not.
Definitely.
So if it's a hot fresh Krispy Kreme donut, oh, I got to eat it. But I find it easier to resist the ones that have been like just in the box chilling for a while. I'm like, eh.
Yeah, mine was fairly fresh, but back to the poem, I guess.
Back to the poem instead of my weird rules about food.
I mean, it
No,
sounds
no,
pretty
no.
good.
It was good. Do you want any of us to take a chance reading, by the way? I
It's
could
up to
pick up.
you. If you feel like that would be more fun for you, you're welcome to.
Sure.
Um,
Just point out exactly where we left off. Is it at the dotted
it's
lines?
right. Yeah, we just ended
Hmm.
at the dotted line. So,
Okay.
yep.
I'll read the next area then. Um, I'll finish this page at least. The beggars who arrive at proper times are not an obstacle to generosity. We cannot say that those who give the vows are hindrances to ordination. The beggars in this world are numerous. Assailants are comparatively few. For if I do no harm to others, others do no injury to me. So, like a treasure found at home, that I have gained without fatigue, my enemies are helpers in my bodhisattva work, and therefore they should be a joy to me. Since I have grown in patience, thanks to them its first fruits I should give. For of my patience they have been the cause. And if I say my foes should not be honored, since they did not mean to stimulate my patience, that's the end of the page.
Yep.
Okay.
There's at least 2 more lines of that stanza, but we'll talk about these 4 first, I think, because otherwise it gets weird trying to go back and forth for me. Because, yeah. So, the poem's almost done. Um, I think that the intent behind these 4 stanzas is really important because when I think about at least my experiences right now in my own town that I live in, we have an incredibly high homeless population. So there's an incredible number of homeless in this area because we have a lot of services for the homeless, so they kind of flock here from other areas because they can get
Mm-hmm.
services. And so I think the culture of, at least here in the United States, would have you get kind of angry at the homeless or feel very prickly towards them in regards
Mm-hmm.
to, well, look at them not having to work, or look at, you know, seeing them quote unquote get free things when you have to go to work for them or something. Um, but the reality is we can't see them as a hindrance to our practice and our path and our work. They are they should be a joy to us, and how they help us work on our patience and our the fruits of our labor, and that they're not a hindrance to our ability to grow, but an opportunity to continue growing.
Hmm.
And on
Oh, I
top of
see.
that, the even if one were to look at it from a very egotistic and selfish kind of point of view, which is understandable because this is how especially we're brought up in a very individualistic culture, at least in the UK and the US, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can look at them as a reassurance that if I find myself homeless let's say that I've lost my job and I just can't find anything else, and I'm not in an emotional state to organize the things in my life. There
Mhm.
are people there who want to help you.
Yeah.
These three things they're getting, that could be you. Imagine if it was your mother or your sister
Mhm.
or whatever relations you have or people you care about. Imagine if it was them saying, oh, thank God that someone is helping these people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this makes me think of, in general, when we're judging other people, whether they're people that we dislike, people that we pity, enemies, those who are poor and homeless. Oftentimes, I ran across this concept from psychology called the fundamental attribution error, where you think
Mm-hmm.
yourself as a multifaceted person with a bunch of things acting upon you from the outside, and you're simply reacting to them as best you can. But when somebody else does something annoying or seems to be in a bad situation, it is instinctual as humans to attribute that to an innate nature of theirs. Oh, that person's doing something annoying, they must be an annoying person. Oh, that
Mhm.
person's poor, they must be just the type of person who makes bad decisions and becomes poor. We discount because we don't have the mental energy or refuse
Mhm.
to incorporate the mental energy to see everybody in that multifaceted way with outside actions acting upon them. People do have their own individual choices, but we often overestimate that aspect of them, especially when it comes to homeless, as the majority of homeless people either are dealing with some sort of psychological issue or
Mhm.
physical illness, including drug abuse, but also high amounts of schizophrenia, extreme bipolar
Right.
disorder, or really bad medical issues.
Well, and then even on a more introspective level, you're looking at a similar facet of how we see ourselves. Of if you are lacking certain like confidences in yourself, if you feel like you've annoyed somebody or you've made somebody angry, you begin to define yourself by the reactions you're bringing out of people rather than the reality of just you. You're like,
Hmm.
I am an annoying person, or I am a person who makes others angry. And you stop being able to define yourself properly, and thus you begin to lack the compassion you need to have for yourself to truly give it to others.
Yeah, yeah.
That was where my mind went on that.
No, I appreciate it. I'm just mulling it over, thinking about it. Self understanding is super important to understanding others as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a way, you're always emotionally, even if you don't say anything to them with words, when you're looking at them, judging them in the split second way we always do at the beginning, you're emotionally interacting with them with the way they present themselves with their circumstances as compared to yours and your identity of yourself. So self compassion, self understanding automatically lends itself to being to more easily extending that to others.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the earlier chapters in this book hits on that really well. And so it's where I would extra be like, this is totally worth a reread.
Mm-hmm.
um, but then beyond that, our sense of those who are beggars, beyond that is our enemies as helpers to bodhisattva work. And I find that very interesting.
Mm.
Like, even those who are actively antagonistic towards us can be a source of joy in their ability to help us in the work and teach us.
I
And
watched.
hmm?
Sorry, you.
No, no, interrupt me at any time.
Okay. I watched a video recently about. It was from in that same Zen tradition, and it was someone asking, "What do I do if someone physically attacks me?" Because especially those who have taken precepts to not
Mm-hmm.
do harm to others, they can feel really pressured to defend themselves physically. And the talk was in part about what led them to that scenario and thinking about the causes beyond what's immediately happening. For example, the social issues that mean that they're trying to mug you
Mhm.
because they can't get a job because they've never been taught to read, and you can't really navigate the world very easily without being able to read. At least in the UK, I imagine it's the same in the US. And then went on to talk about a story where someone apparently tried to assassinate the Buddha.
Wow.
And it seems from my brief research on it, it's a common story. So,
Mhm.
canon or not, it talks about the way that the Buddha essentially just talks them down.
Hmm.
And yeah, this idea of enemies. If you're someone, because of course the Buddha's the Buddha. As much as we think of the Buddha as the result of the path, but if you take someone who's, say, someone like me, who is not there, and
Mhm.
someone tries to physically attack me, this can essentially be, like they say, a helper to my own work.
Mhm.
Someone trying to hurt me can really help me work out in the moment. How do I navigate this when someone's in an intense emotional state? Because it doesn't have to be a violent one. When someone's really depressed or really sad or in some other kind of state, how can I navigate this? And so this intense situation that forces you to deal with it can be really educational. And don't get me wrong, it's a dangerous one. We shouldn't be trying to induce it, but if it's happening, we'll take it.
Mhm. Well said. It's happening. We'll take it.
Yeah.
I think that's very well said. Um,
Hmm.
for of my patients, they have been the cause. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. Um, and then Strahd read these two lines, and then they lead into the next few lines of, "And if I say my foes should not be honored, since they did not mean to stimulate my patience, so they didn't do it on purpose. Why do I revere the sacred Dharma, cause indeed of my attainment?" I feel like
Hmm.
that's like its own thing. Those four sentences, four lines. And if I say my foes should not be honored, since they did not mean since they did not mean to stimulate my patience, why do I revere the sacred Dharma? Cause indeed of my attainment. Hmm.
Guess you could read that as the Dharma doesn't know your personal circumstances. in terms, and when I say Dharma here, I mean the teachings that we speak to each other.
Right.
He doesn't know. It doesn't mean to address that exact situation you're in, but it does. And
Mhm.
also the Dharma of suffering, the 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 fact that we are in these situations in the first place. We say we don't thank our suffering in general. We don't say, "Ah, oh, thank you, pain in my arm, for teaching me something about what it is." Um, and I was having a chat with Silent Gong about this, and he said to me, "I envy your suffering," and we had a nice talk about this. Um, because you can actually just thank the pain in your arm. I have a pain in my hand now, and it's a
Mhm.
wonderful object of meditation. And it's a weird concept to thank it, but it's like thanking the sort of antagonistic enemy in a fight.
Mhm.
And so we seem to look at the Dharma in one way and see our suffering and see all the things that, because without suffering, the Dharma wouldn't exist, and suffering is the cause of the Dharma. We would not need the Dharma without it.
Right.
And yet we look at the Dharma and say, "Oh, you're brilliant. You're the best, man." And we look at these antagonistic people, we somehow treat them differently. For
Hmm. Mhm.
even though it is one of the same, they are both the causes of our understanding of what it is to be.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Very true.
Hmm.
These
Maybe we'll
enemies
revisit that.
can. Hmm.
Sorry, carry on. I was just marketing.
Okay. These enemies conspired to harm me, I protest, and therefore should receive no honors. But had they worked to help me like a doctor, how could I have brought forth patience? Thanks to those whose minds are full of malice, I engender patience in myself. They therefore are the cause of my patience, fit for veneration, like the Dharma. Just like what you said, Techie. Exactly.
I'm a poet and I didn't know it.
Fancy, fancy.
This is nice. I do have to leave a little bit early here.
No problem. It's a short chapter,
Yeah,
fortunately.
I appreciate it. I was glad I was able to join in here.
I appreciate your insights.
Nice to
Take
have
care.
you here as well. Right. So hello,